There are warplanes we admire for their power, and then there are the ones we remember with love. The ones that brought our fathers home. The ones that filled the skies with the sound of freedom. From the silver wings of the Mustang to the thunder of the Flying Fortress, these machines carried more than bombs and bullets. They carried hope. They were built in factories across America by men and women who believed every rivet mattered. Today, we look back at 10 aircraft that defined a generation, planes that didn't just fight a war, they won our hearts. P-51 Mustang. When the Mustang first took shape in 1940, it was meant for Britain, a simple contract from a nation desperate for fighters. The early models, powered by the Allison engine, performed well at low altitudes but gasped for breath above 15,000 feet. Everything changed when engineers fitted it with the British Rolls-Royce Merlin. Overnight, the P-51 became a thoroughbred. Fast, long-legged, and deadly. By 1943, American bomber crews had a new guardian, sleek Mustangs escorting B-17 and B-24s deep into German skies. With its laminar flow wings, 6.5 zero-caliber Brownings, and over 1,600 miles of range, the Mustang could fight its way to Berlin and back. Pilots said it flew like a thought, quick, steady, and utterly loyal. It wasn't just a machine, it was a partner that brought them home. After the war, it served in Korea, air shows, and the silver screen, forever tied to the story of American courage. Even today, the roar of a Merlin-powered Mustang can still turn heads, a living echo of freedom's finest wings. B-17 Flying Fortress. If the Mustang was the guardian of the skies, the B-17 was its beating heart. Built for precision daylight bombing, the Flying Fortress became the backbone of America's air campaign over Europe. From Schweinfurt and Regensburg to the fiery skies above Berlin and Dresden, these four-engine giants carried the war deep into the enemy's heart. Each B-17 packed 4 Wright R-1820 Cyclones, nearly 1,200 horsepower apiece, and up to 13.50 caliber guns bristling from turrets and windows. Crews trusted her like no other. Stories abound of fortresses limping home on 3 engines, or with holes big enough to see daylight through. Pilots swore, if you got hit, she'd still get you home. Those endless formations, boxes of fortresses glittering in the sun, became the very image of Allied might. She was more than aluminum and rivets. She was courage forged in steel and sky. Today, surviving B-17s like Memphis Belle remind us of the men who flew straight into flak and fighter fire, believing they were striking a blow for freedom. Decades later, her silhouette still moves the heart, the sound of liberty carried on 4 roaring engines. C-47, Skytrain. Before it wore olive drab and invasion stripes, it was a sleek silver airliner called the DC-3, the most successful passenger plane of the 1930s. When war came, Douglas turned it into the C-47 Skytrain, the workhorse that kept the Allied armies moving. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of Burma and the far islands of the Pacific, the Skytrain was everywhere freedom needed a lift. Powered by twin Pratt & Whitney R-1830S, it could haul 6,000 pounds of cargo or 28 paratroopers, take off from muddy strips, and sip fuel like a gentleman. Soldiers called it the Goonie Bird, a name said with affection. It wasn't glamorous, it was dependable, and in war, that meant everything. It dropped the first paratroopers into France, flew the hump over the Himalayas, and later delivered food to Berlin when the world divided. Pilots joked, if the C-47 couldn't haul it, it probably wasn't worth hauling. Thousands went back to civilian life after 1945, hauling mail, passengers, and memories. Even today, you can still hear that steady, twin-engine rumble somewhere in the world, the sound of a plane that once carried freedom itself. F-4 U Corsair. When the Corsair first appeared in 1940, it looked like something from another world. All engine, all wings, and that unmistakable inverted gull shape. Designed for both the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps, it packed the mighty Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, pumping out more than 2,000 horsepower and swinging a massive 13-foot propeller. But early on, the Navy turned it down. Too tricky to land on carriers, too temperamental for deck duty. So the Marines took it to war instead. And out over the Solomons, Bougainville, and Okinawa, the Corsair became legend. It could top 446 miles per hour, climb to 36,000 feet, and hit hard with 6.50 caliber Brownings. Against the nimble Japanese Zero, it racked up an astonishing 11-to-1 kill ratio. Pilots said, "She was ugly to some, but beautiful to us." That bent-wing bird could take punishment, bring you home, and make you feel invincible. After the war, the Corsair lived on in Korea and in American hearts, immortalized on television in Black Sheep Squadron. To this day, its silhouette still speaks of Pacific sunsets, carrier decks, and the proud roar of freedom on wings. F-6F Hellcat. When the war began, Japan's Zero ruled the skies, fast, light, and untouchable. America needed an answer, and Grumman delivered it. Born directly from lessons learned in early battles, the F-6F Hellcat roared into service in 1943, just as the tide of the Pacific War began to turn. It wasn't the prettiest or the flashiest fighter, but it was tough, forgiving, and perfectly built for the job. Powered by the same Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp as the Corsair, the Hellcat could reach 380 miles per hour, climb like a rocket, and soak up battle damage that would shred lesser planes. It was easy to fly, stable to land, and strong enough to make rookies look like veterans. Pilots called Grumman the Iron Works, and for good reason. These machines just refused to die. By the end of the war, Hellcats had destroyed more than 5,000 Japanese aircraft, accounting for the majority of U.S. Navy air victories. It became known, rightly, as the plane that won the Pacific. The Hellcat proved something powerful. America's genius wasn't just in design, but in mass production, turning reliability, simplicity, and strength into victory at sea. P-38 Lightning. From the moment it first flew in 1939, the Lockheed P-38 looked like nothing else in the sky. Twin booms, twin engines, and a cockpit nacelle that seemed plucked from the future. Designed as a high-speed interceptor, it found its greatest fame in the vast Pacific, where long distances demanded range and reliability above all else. Each Lightning carried two Allison V1710 engines with turbochargers, giving it both altitude and endurance few single-engine fighters could match. It could cruise 400 miles to the target, fight at 420 miles per hour, and still make it home on one engine if the other failed. All of its guns were mounted in the nose, meaning every burst hit where the pilot aimed, clean and deadly. Pilots loved that confidence. Twice the power, twice the safety, they'd say. And Japanese pilots came to fear it, calling it the fork-tailed devil. It was equally effective as a bomber escort, a dive attacker, or a photo recon platform, proving the genius of Lockheed engineering. Aces like Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire made history in the P-38, turning its distinctive silhouette into a symbol of daring and innovation. Sleek, strange, and unforgettable, the Lightning was America's twin-engine masterpiece. P-47 Thunderbolt. Big, loud, and built like a tank. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt was proof that brute strength could win wars. When it entered service in 1942, many pilots doubted a fighter that weighed nearly twice as much as a Spitfire. But once they took it into combat, those doubts vanished. The Thunderbolt could dive like a stone, hit like a hammer, and still bring you home full of holes. It fought everywhere, from the skies of Europe to the jungles of the Pacific, earning a reputation for toughness that few machines could match. Powered by the mighty Pratt & Whitney R2800 with a turbocharger the size of a barrel, the Jug could top 430 miles per hour and carry 8 50 caliber machine guns plus bombs and rockets for pounding ground targets. Pilots loved it because it forgave their mistakes. You could take damage, lose power, and somehow still limp back to base. Many called it the friend who never gave up. By war's end, more than 15,000 Thunderbolts had rolled off the line, each one a monument to American steel, sweat, and spirit. The Jug wasn't graceful, but it was indestructible. And that's exactly why everyone loved it. SBD Dauntless. Before jets, before smart bombs, victory at sea often came down to one thing: nerve. And no aircraft embodied that courage better than the Douglas SBD Dauntless. From 1940 to 1944, this modest-looking dive bomber was the backbone of the U.S. Navy's carrier force. Its finest hour came at Midway in June 1942, when Dauntless crews turned the tide of the Pacific War in a single morning. The SBD's signature was its perforated dive brakes, metal grids that let it plummet almost vertically without tearing itself apart. It could drop a 1,000-pound bomb from 15,000 feet with deadly accuracy and still fly more than 1,100 miles round trip. Pilots affectionately called it slow but deadly. At Midway, they sank 4 Japanese carriers in minutes, shattering Japan's naval power and changing history forever. Sailors loved it because it was honest, sturdy, and forgiving, a plane that always brought them home. The Dauntless wasn't glamorous, but it was faithful and true. Even now, historians call it the plane that turned the tide. For the men who flew it, it wasn't just a bomber. It was the beating heart of victory in the Pacific. B-25 Mitchell. Few airplanes ever captured the American spirit quite like the B-25 Mitchell. A twin-engine medium bomber, it entered service in 1941 and quickly proved itself one of the most versatile aircraft of the war. But its legend was sealed in April 1942 when 16 B-25s lifted off from the deck of the carrier USS Hornet, bound for Japan in the daring Doolittle Raid, America's first strike after Pearl Harbor. Powered by 2 Wright R-2600 engines, the Mitchell could cruise at 270 miles per hour and haul up to 3,000 pounds of bombs. Later versions, like the B-25J, bristled with forward-firing guns, sometimes 14 of them, turning it into a flying gunship for strafing ships and ground targets alike. Pilots loved its balance and dependability. It could fly low, take punishment, and still bring its crew home. Mechanics praised how easy it was to repair in the field. And to a nation still reeling from December 7th, the Doolittle Raid proved that America could strike back and would never quit. The B-25 served well into the 1950s, and hundreds survive today in civilian hands. Tough, adaptable, and brave, it remains the embodiment of America's can-do spirit. TBF/TBM Avenger. When the Grumman Avenger debuted in 1942, it arrived too late to save its predecessor, the doomed TBD Devastator, at Midway, but just in time to turn the tide afterward. Built like a battleship with wings, the Avenger became the Navy's premier torpedo bomber, serving from Guadalcanal to the Philippine Sea and every major battle in between. Its single Wright R-2600 engine could haul a 2,000-pound torpedo or an equal load of bombs, and its 3-man crew, pilot, bombardier, and rear gunner, were protected by thick armor and steady design. It wasn't fast, but it was strong. Many Avengers came home full of holes, their crews alive because the airplane simply refused to give up. Pilots adored it for that toughness. Future President George H.W. Bush flew one in combat and was shot down in 1944, a story that became part of the aircraft's enduring legend. Sailors called it a friend you could trust. After the war, Avengers kept serving in anti-submarine and rescue roles well into the 1950s. Rugged, loyal, and dependable, the TBF/TBM Avenger stands today as one of the longest-serving workhorses in U.S. naval aviation, the torpedo plane that truly refused to die. They weren't just machines of war. They were the wings of a generation, built by hands that believed in something bigger than themselves. From the sleek Mustang to the steadfast Flying Fortress, each of these aircraft carried not only bombs and bullets, but also the hopes of millions waiting back home. Even now, decades later, their sound still stirs the heart. The deep rumble of piston engines echoing across quiet fields and museum hangars. They remind us of a time when courage flew on aluminum wings and freedom had a roar all its own. Which one of these legendary warbirds means the most to you? If you remember seeing or flying one, tell us your story below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the skies of history are always worth revisiting.